as you know, there are a lot of issues in Pennsylvania as far as the amount of dollars going to public schools. For 25 years, we did not have a school funding formula. Last year, on June 1st, the governor signed, legislature passed the Fair Funding Act, which was a formula that now distributes money on an equitable basis that's aimed at getting to adequacy for many of the school districts in Pennsylvania. That funding formula has only been in place for 1 year, but it's basically 2 years of funding went through it. So the $5.9 billion that's allocated to public schools, about 6%, or about $352 million, has gone through the new funding formula. If more money is added into that process, of course, our schools will benefit and go from equity to adequacy at this stage. I'd like to take a minute, and maybe everybody can introduce themselves, their title, and where they're from. We'll start with
Pete Carbone, Superintendent Aliquippa.
David Whitez, Administrative Director, Beaver Valley CTC.
Jane Bogalino, Superintendent at Rochester. Tammy Adams, Superintendent at Southside.
Joe Guarino, Superintendent New Brighton.
Donna Nugent, Superintendent Beaver Falls.
Gary Ciccarelli, Business Manager, Beaver Falls.
Johanna Raw, Business Administrator, Hopewell area.
Mike Lewis, Director of Curriculum here at the IU.
Carrie Rowe, Superintendent, Beaver area.
Michael Allison, Principal at Hopewell High School.
Michelle Miller, Superintendent at Hopewell Area School District.
And I want to thank Dr. Rowe and the committee from the IU and Dr. Rosenthal for allowing us to do a little bit of planning and have an opportunity to meet with the press and discuss some issues. First thing I'd really like to talk about is whether communities are aware or not. As superintendents, school leaders, we want to make the public aware there are 4 factors driving education right now that's kind of putting us behind the 8 ball. Number 1 is the cost of the pension, the PSERS, Pennsylvania State Employees Retirement System, the cost of charter and cyber charter schools, medical costs, and special education costs. Those 4 in itself, we have no control of. They drive our budget if we have students who move in who have special needs, and there are several of them. Sometimes we're forced of putting on a class. We can't reduce costs in certain areas. The pension costs are set by the state. The current employer rate for PSERS, in other words, what the employer has to pay into the retirement system, is 32.57% of every $100 that is paid. So you can see that you have no control of that when you're paying $32.57 on every $100 an employee makes to make up for what the legislature has not put in itself. You can see how that's driving us. We have no control over the cost of cyber or charter schools. When a family elects to choose that direction, we pay the tuition costs. And that escalates across the state. Nationwide, there's about 10% of the students that are educated in cyber charter schools, but that leaves 90% of the kids that are in public schools in our nation. And we can't allow them not to be funded at an appropriate level at this stage. Okay? I'm going to set the stage by asking, if we got additional monies from our legislature, what would our school districts do with those dollars? And Dr. Rowe, maybe you want to address that first at this stage, or call in somebody who can address it.
Absolutely. Carrie Rowe, Beaver area. One of the things that I think I would want the community to know first is what is unique about the way the Beaver County schools are working together. We are being excellent stewards of the money that we've been given, but as our circuit rider said, we're kind of behind the 8 ball if no new money comes in. So some of the things that we're doing that are unique to this area is that we're sharing teachers. Beaver Area School District has shared 2 teachers with Western Beaver. We have 2 school districts, I believe it is Aliquippa and Rochester, who are sharing, Aliquippa and New Brighton. No, I'm going to give it one more shot here. Rochester and New Brighton, there we go. Rochester and New Brighton that are sharing a an alternative education teacher. We have 3 districts. I'm not going to attempt to name them.
I can Beaver Falls, New Brighton, and Rochester are sharing a technology director.
Technology director, fantastic. So another thing would be, instead of forced mergers, things like what Beaver Area School District is doing with Midland, where we're saying, you know, we can partner, we can help you with your 9th grade through 12th grade, and take some of the burden off of both communities, off of Midland, because then they don't have to have the high school, and off of Beaver, because then there's tuition dollars coming in to help offset. So all of these things are unique in our area, and we're being excellent stewards of the money that we've been given. But if we were to receive additional dollars, I think one of the things that, and I'll let other people speak to it, but one of the things we want to do is create partnerships with things like the Shell plant that's coming in. We want to create additional partnerships with the Beaver County Chamber of Commerce. They have a huge reach, and they can make opportunities for our school districts. There is an advanced manufacturing partnership that is in Beaver County. We want to partner with them, but these things all take money. Community college, CCBC has come up with academies at college, so our students who are juniors and seniors can go to college, but there's still some amount of money that we have to pay out for that. So all of these excellent opportunities that are preparing our students for the 21st century really require additional money when you're thinking about the fact that, no, if we do absolutely nothing, our costs are already going up with PSERS, with special education, with the pension reform, with healthcare costs. So we need the additional money to form these partnerships so that we can have opportunities for kids. And then with those opportunities, we'll have those kids stay in Beaver County, educated in Beaver County and living in Beaver County, and then working in Beaver County. That's really what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm not sure what other districts, if there's somebody else who would like to speak to what you would do with some additional monies.
Catherine, over the past 10+ years, just specifically in my district, we have not replaced individuals, professional individuals and administrative individuals when they have retired. So we have absorbed positions through attrition to stay ahead of the fiscal challenges that we were presently occurring, but that we also saw coming down, down from the state and federal in the future. If we were given, and I can speak probably for my partners here too, many of us would add some of the staff members back. We had to reduce program areas, curricular areas. You've been to my district many times, and we appreciate that, but you see when you drive out to our 75 square miles, we do not have districts that are close by to tap into other resources. So transportation has always been quite costly for us. We do send children to the Aviation Academy, to the Health Academy. We have children going into the city of Pittsburgh for different job shadow experiences, different career exploration experiences. The Secretary of Ed, Pedro Rivera, continues to talk about providing career exploration kindergarten, through senior year. But obviously there are dollar signs attached, and especially in a district as rural as mine, where we do not have great revenue from businesses. We have one restaurant, in the 75 square miles right now. So we do have to look at going into Beaver, going into the city of Pittsburgh, looking into Ohio and West Virginia for resources. So that would be one area. I would definitely look to replace some of the teachers that we did not replace positions, like I said, when they retired. In 6 years, we went from 8 administrators to 5. So that's significant there too. I'm a district that does not have assistant principals, that does not have a dean of students, that does not have a curriculum director, that does not have an assistant superintendent. So we are working with less, but I think we have come to a point where we can no longer ask our teachers to work with less. We cannot. If we want to sustain, obviously, the programming, the curriculum, and the initiatives that we have put in place for our children.
I might add, one of the issues that our school leaders are faced with is, how do you budget? How do you budget for these kinds of things when the state doesn't approve their budget until June, and in some cases not until March of the following year, when you have an extended budget impasse. It's very difficult for school districts and business managers to do that. Maybe the two business managers could speak to, what are you doing with Act 1 right now, and how does that impact what your financial issues are at this stage?
Gary Ciccarelli from Big Beaver Falls Area School District. It's very tough as a business manager when you're trying to forecast forward, but you're not exactly sure what dollars you are getting. I mean, obviously, the school board, it by all means, does not want to raise taxes if possible, but in the same time, we have ongoing costs that you have no control of, as we mentioned before. It becomes very difficult when you're not sure of the rules and you're playing the game. It's great, Governor Wolf has promised additional funding, and we're hoping for that. But when your salaries are going up 3%, your pension is going up, we're paying over $3 million in just pension costs alone. You can only cut so many things. We have no real additional construction coming in, no revenue. Hopefully the Marcellus Shell plant will help every district around the county. But until then, we rely about 70% on state funding. So any changes to state funding will greatly impact us.
Johanna?
Johanna Robb, Hopewell area. Just to follow up what Gary said, he's absolutely right. It's the timing of changes in terms of revenue streams. The expenditure side of the ledger is easier to predict because, unfortunately, it predictably increases significantly every year. That is the easier part of the ledger. The question on the other side of the ledger is how are we going to support the programs, the staffing, the initiatives that the board, the superintendent, the administration really wants to either continue or to implement in terms of improvement. That's what makes planning and developing next year's budget, and we're doing that now, such a challenge. Because from what we've read, the monies that we thought we could count on, and certainly for those of us who've been in this business a while, that's a luxury we no longer have. I've been around long enough to know when I could budget for a normal 2.5% or 3% increase in basic subsidy, we could count on that. We could count on when we got it. We no longer can do that. And so in terms of the revenues that need to support our programs, it becomes increasingly difficult to rely on them.
Let me give you one statistics. In 2008, 2009, the employer share that was paid into the pension fund statewide was $231 million. By 1450, that number that was paid in by school districts is $1.03 billion. So you can see the cost driver in just that short period of time. And that was just released by the Independent Financial Office, as well as some disheartening information. This morning they released that says Pennsylvania's revenue is down $716 million for the current school year, which coupled with other years' deficiencies, puts it at about $2.8 billion. So the state is facing a crisis of where to get money from, which leads me to a next point, is that there's a strong legislative push that probably will introduce a bill within the next 2 weeks. It's similar to the bill that was introduced last year. It was given a number of Senate Bill 76, which was the Property Tax Independence Act, which was the total elimination of property tax in Pennsylvania. As you know, property tax is one of the main drivers in our district for firm revenue coming into our district. If that occurs, and it may well pass, there'll be some significant impacts of what will happen. In place of the dollars to replace the $13 to $14 billion in property tax that's collected, the legislature is talking about doing two things: moving the personal income tax, the PIT, from 3.07 to 4.95, increasing the sales tax from 6% to 7%, and then expanding those items that were exempt in previous years to that sales tax. The issue that also is in play, in the previous bill, if a district has a debt service, that they have bonds, that they might have done renovations or built a new school, the district would still be required to bill that portion of the debt to the taxpayers until that debt is paid off. And in Beaver County, every district has a debt service that they would have to continue to bill for until that bond issue is paid off. So the issue becomes, as nobody likes to pay property tax, no. But are we further ahead with the current system, or are people actually going to pay more in taxes after the new legislation is enacted? To give you a typical example, we talked about it very briefly. Median income in Pennsylvania is in the low 50s. Let's take, for example, you're paying 3% on $50,000, that's $1,500. If it moves to 5%, rounding it off, you would pay $2,500 in personal income tax, plus whatever the sales tax items you choose to purchase, and expansion of those, plus the debt service that still will be continued to be billed. There were, I mentioned to the group at the beginning, there were 43% or 215 districts have at least 20% of the debt service statewide. Another 23 districts have 50% of their debt service that they would continue to bill for. I believe there were only 8 districts that could totally eliminate their property tax in Pennsylvania. So you have to weigh those facts against what the current system is if a new system is in place. Okay. I think every school leader, every board really wrestles with the fact when it comes to raising property tax, because they know their communities. They know exactly what's going on. They know the number of senior citizens that are living on fixed incomes. Nobody raises taxes on the whim that we want additional dollars. It's there because these are mandated kinds of things that need to be happen for children. And that's why, as school leaders, you know, our purpose is to provide opportunities for children to be successful in life. And that's why we're all here. We're going to make the best education possible for our children. Let me throw, you may have some questions, but let me throw one question at Mike Allison, who's the principal at Hopewell High School. Mike, what would you do if you had more money coming to Hopewell as far as children are concerned?
Well, all of our districts have a diversity of socioeconomic backgrounds, so our kids come to our schools with different opportunities in their home. So I think when we talk about where we need to go in the future, we need to build 21st century technology skills. And with additional funding, we can provide technology that will allow students to see, to use, and to learn that technology to prepare them for careers in the future. We also know that we need to provide professional development and training for our staff so that they understand those technologies as well and how we can use them. I hope that continuing to fund a strong public education system will continue to support the Career and Technology Education Center. Because we have strong partnerships with them, our students are able to build career skills for their future. Our students in programs like welding are going out in co-ops and having opportunities to work with employers. And that's going to provide them the skills that they need to have to be successful and hopefully get jobs with the Shell cracker plant. The other thing that we would continue to do would be able to support, we have a lot more needs with special ed students, and providing them a quality education in an inclusive environment where we include them in our schools with regular ed students and really meet their needs. Increased funding would allow us to do that. And finally, those partnerships that Dr. Rowe talked about with the community college and Robert Morris and with Penn State Beaver, where we're providing dual enrollment opportunities for students to earn college credits and experience college as a high school student to help them be more successful. And what's really unique about those opportunities is we're getting students who would not have traditionally maybe have been in the socioeconomic situation where they're thinking about college, but we're providing them a low-cost opportunity to earn college credits prior to graduating high school.
If no money were to come, what would, as superintendents, what would you be faced with? Throw that out as a question, and then Catherine. Anyone want to address that?
Jane Bobolina from Rochester. I don't know that we can cut any more areas in Rochester because we, for years, have administrative positions and teaching positions and programs that it really worries me what would happen if we had to move that direction. So I'm not sure that we could maintain the level of programming that we currently are. If we had no increase or a decrease, we would definitely have to eliminate additional programs. Different things that we offer at Rochester, one of which includes a summer school program. In past years, it was funded through the state, and now Rochester funds it. We fund it ourselves, but it's such an extremely important program for high-risk students, low achievers, students who just need a special place to go in the summer. And that's one program that I can guarantee we would probably have to do.
I think that the era of doing more with less is over. We really can't do more with less. We need some additional dollars coming from the state. We elect legislators to support our public school system in Pennsylvania, and that's what we hope we get the support from our legislatures to put that investment into the children of Pennsylvania. It will make our state a great state, and I think that's what we all want. The politics that comes into play in those situations, we all realize that. But the bottom line is we're here for children and for families of children who can't speak for themselves, that we want to make a difference in their lives so they can be productive citizens once they come out in our society.
I think it's also important to recognize that Pennsylvania ranks 46th out of the 50 states in the state paying its fair share of the education costs. That's not a place where I think Pennsylvania residents want their education system to be.
And the state share at one time was significantly higher. In the early 70s, the state share to school district was about 54%. And that occurred only because in the early 70s, you remember what happened? They instituted the state income tax. So they had more money when they gave more money to schools. And that number has decreased to the point now that on average for Pennsylvania, 58% comes from local property tax to fund schools, 37% comes from the state, and 5% comes from the federal government. That's not the theme in Beaver County. You will see districts that pay exceedingly more than 57% from their communities that have to pay for that education. Those issues are disheartening. The average state support nationwide is 47%. So we're at 37% as a state. Even if it would move up, you can see we're not even at the end. We're 10 percentage points below what the national average is at this state. So are we complaining? I don't think we're complaining. I think we're asking that we need a better investment, more investment in public education if we're going to do what we need to do to educate children at this stage.
Right, what 46 out of 50 tells you is that we need not to put more on our local taxpayers. We need the state to pay its fair share. That's what 46 out of 50 tells me. 46 out of 50 with no new money coming in tells me also that programs will have to be cut, because that's the only way we can really take a stab at balancing our budget. We're handcuffed in a lot of ways that I think the community doesn't recognize. One, for example, is our inability to cut staff based on economic reasons. So if, for example, our budget came in and we had let's say $500,000 deficit, someone might say, well, cut some teachers. Well, the state doesn't allow us to do that. That's illegal. And the only way that you can begin then to deal with deficits that would be that big would be to cut programs. So all of the innovative things that you hear around the table with career and college readiness, with STEM and STEAM in the communities, sharing programs that cause transportation issues. There are 5 districts that send students, for example, to Ambridge for their JROTC program. All of these types of things will have to go, and will have to go back to grandma's education. Right now, it's not your grandma's education system. But you don't give us any more money, and we're going to have to go back to something like that.
Dr. Would you also talk about the situation in special education, for example, how that sometimes plays out with minimums
Right.
and maximums?
We absolutely want to provide a fantastic education for students who have special needs. That's not the issue. But the issue is that the state puts certain mandates on us. For example, if you have 15 full-time special education students, that requires 1 teacher. When your 16th full-time special education student moves in, now you need another teacher. So again, there are certain constraints that we have on our budget that I don't think the community is aware of. And so they say, you just need to tighten your belt. You just need to cut back. And we're saying, well, we're willing to do that, and we're willing to be creative. But you're going to have to take some of these mandates away. One of the mandates that we have now is with PIMS, our Pennsylvania Information Management System. I don't know how many people are aware that there are 84 data set collections. There are 84 pieces of information that we have to give to the state each year. That requires us to have another position. There is somebody that has to do that. Because if that data isn't right, then it affects our subsidy. It affects the amount of money we can get. Go ahead.
You start to talk about cutting staff, cutting programs. The loser is the students.
Mm.
And that's what we're in the business for, public education. We're here to educate our students. And do those things, they're the ones that are losing the opportunity. And I think, as you can see around this table, not only are all of us committed to our students that we serve in our respective districts, but we're committed to all Beaver County students.
Eric Rosendale, Intermediate Unit Executive Director. I would like to add to the conversation that Beaver County has a long history of sharing resources and being good stewards of the funds that they are charged with, from Healthcare Consortium to our New Horizons School and the Career and Technology Center. There are many programs. We do joint purchasing together. So again, highlighting the fact that everyone is conscientious, everyone does do their best to work with each other, to save where we can. But every program has increased costs, and that needs to be dealt with. And that goes to what Dr. Rowe was talking about. With no increase, there's no room for improvement, and it just continues to whittle. No matter how good a steward you are, it's just impossible.
I would add, Michelle Miller from Hopewell, I would add there are some unknowns outside of even what we've talked about today. For instance, with the Shell plant, we're very excited to have a housing complex in our district with 222 condos that are being built and folks are ready to move in. Shell will be focusing their folks to come in there, but we may have students. 222 students or more, what are their needs? That could be significant for us, and we don't know what that is. So those are some decisions that in the middle of the year, because when students come to our door and they want to enroll, we're going to educate them. And so there's another complexity to budgeting, and those are unknowns. We also are responsible for educating the students who are incarcerated in our county jail. On any given day, we could look at the different needs that are there, and that is something that they may or may not need additional services for us. And so that's something very unique for our school district that we try to plan for, but at any given time throughout that school year, we can look at trends, but at any time it could change. We also have an organization that has a home for medically fragile students in our district. 1, 2, 3 students
could have requirements. New students coming in, they're talking about expanding. That could have significant impact, and we don't have control over that, but we're responsible for educating. So at any given time, we may have a budget that's set, but the needs of those students have to come first. And there are certain things that we're required to do to provide those services. And so there are a lot of challenges that we can try and plan as best as we can, but that just further complicates the budget process for us.
Additionally, Joe Garino from New Brighton. One of the items that I think also ties together the educational opportunities and what we're doing is infrastructure. Many of us are in districts that have buildings that are 30, 40, 50 years old. The assumption by the public usually when you talk infrastructure is you're building a new facility. Most of us aren't thinking that way. We're thinking about renovating what we have, but that comes at substantial cost, especially when you talk about the age of the buildings that we're renovating. We were having a discussion the other day. Our buildings are wired for 1970 when they were built, but yet we're having 2017 technology fully functioning through them. We're struggling in that. You know, debt service and taking out a bond is what many places do, even to afford the infrastructure upgrades, not necessarily build a new structure. But we don't have that room left in any of our district budgets to absorb that additional debt cost and that long-term bond repayments. So we're forced now to be band-aiding the issues instead of being able to efficiently update our buildings and update them in a way that all the opportunities we're talking about can then take part.
The answer is not moving from 46th out of 50 states to 47th. We need the state to bring up their share from the really low, paltry amount that they're contributing now to what they're supposed to do, because our Constitution says that they need to provide for a fair and efficient school system, and they're not doing that. And being 46th out of 50 isn't going to do it. So they need to come up from the low percent that they're contributing now, and get us at least in the middle of the pack. I don't think anybody likes the idea of being in the middle of the pack, but that would be a substantial increase for this county and for the state.
I don't know if there's a number. I mean, there's a number thrown out that every year that you project about $400 million to be shared by the 500 school districts. That'll draw significant amounts of money to every school district, and they can expand some programs at this stage. But you know, the last couple of years it was 200 million one year and 100 million plus some special ed costs. So you know, in the last 2 years they've driven out about 352 million, when actually if you look at 400 million per year, it should have been about $800 million at this stage. But you know, really it's everybody in here works efficiently, looks at partnerships, looks at cooperatives, looks at ways of doing things. And I think the public is unaware of all the good things that are happening. We have a CTC, we have a community college, we have an intermediate unit, all of which are aimed at fostering partnerships for our school districts in our county. And we ought to take advantage of them, and we have taken advantage of them. We've saved a great deal of money over the years in partnerships that we've had, and we'd like to expand those partnerships. We have a big new player now with Shell. We'd certainly like to see if we can prepare children for a very good paying job in the future, or one of the spin-off jobs that will support that Shell plant, that they can make it a good living for their families at this stage.
A few years back, and we talked about charter school costs, we were getting reimbursed between 25 to 30%. So obviously on $1 million, the district, particularly smaller districts, got their $300,000 back. You take that away, and maybe only 10% of the kids are going to the charter school. We still have the teacher in the classroom. We still have the utilities going on. That doesn't reduce the cost to that classroom. And I think that's a misnomer that goes on, that these kids, you're not paying for them anymore. You're still paying for everything that goes into that classroom.
In any, you know, putting a figure out there, you know, when you have a negative fund balance like we do development, anything is appreciated.
Anything helps.
Well, Pete, I'm ready to write a check for you today. Well, one of the things they certainly can do is to talk to their legislators. You know, every school district is represented by a legislature, although we only have about 4 in our county. I think we should be aware that our communities can talk to the legislators about the needs that our schools have. It shouldn't be always on the shoulders of taxpayers to support public education within that community. We elect them to do a job. We expect them to do that job and support the things that our community wants. If they say it's important for them to get more money for schools to maintain these programs, then they should speak up and say those kinds of things to our legislators. That's, you know, we have a voice when we vote, we have a voice when we can call and visit them as well.
Encourage them to have a budget in place on July 1st so that we do know what we're working with financially.
And Catherine, our doors are always open, obviously. We work you know, quite aggressively at forming positive relationships with our families, so encouraging them to lean on the people around this table if they have questions or if they need talking points, you know, to attend board meetings. In general session, a lot of this discussion occurs, which can help educate them as to what the state, you know, the current state is with this matter.
You know, we have a great country because we have a great educated citizenry. And if our country is going to maintain its greatness, I think we need to have citizens, students that we can educate that can go out and be productive members of our societies. And that's our role as educators. Anything else?
That was everything that I had for you. You guys provided some great information, so.
First of all, thank you.
Thank you.
Because I think it's important that we get a message out through our communications, and that's the Beaver County Times. I think that's key to the whole process. And, you know, the more that we can make people aware of what our situation is, I think the better they can make a judgment of how they can support us at this stage. Thank you, all 3 of you for coming in.
Thank you for coming.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.